Welcome back to another episode of the Rentvesting Podcast. Today on the show we have Jade Hamilton. Now, Jade is known for showing landlords how they can double their gross rental returns. She has a 3-step formula to rental property success, which makes it quicker and easier to progress quickly up the property ladder. Jade is particularly passionate about empowering and educating property owners with the aim of, just getting a better landlord experience to achieve better results and faster progress. Jade is definitely a role model for Gen Y investors by showing it is actually possible to break into the property market. She herself manages her own multi-lease rental properties and is currently in the middle of a 10-townhouse development. On the show, Jade shares her experiences and tips with us. So, let's get to it. Jade, hi, welcome to the Rentvesting Podcast. It's great to have you onto the show.
Hi Peter, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, no worries. Jade, why don't you start off and just share a little bit about yourself and what you get up to in the property investing world?
Yeah, no problem. My name's Jade Hamilton. I'm the founder of the Australian Landlord Institute, and I've been in property investing for the last 10 years. And my family actually own a company that manages over 180 homes. So I've been around property my whole life, and so I've been doing my own personal investing and building up my own personal portfolio, and doing a bit of renovation, and just building up slowly so that I can have a passive income. I don't have to work anymore, basically. I don't have to be tied down to a job. I can be working on projects that I'm passionate about, like setting up this business.
Yeah, you're doing an awesome job with it. I actually saw your article in Australian Property Investor the other month there. I think you were talking about, from memory, a townhouse development that you're actually undertaking at the moment?
I'm about to start construction next month, actually. So building some townhouses in Newcastle.
Very cool. So you've obviously, through your experience, you've deployed a number of different strategies. What would be your suggestions around some different options that people could consider before, renting out their home?
Yeah, definitely. There's a few things to consider. The first thing I would always be considering first is basically where you are going to be living yourself, and making sure that, especially when you're starting out, it's important to think about if you can save money by choosing where you live, because every dollar adds up, and that's a good place to start. The next thing to consider, if you've already got a property, is it suitable for renting in the first place? So Is there enough demand in the market to make it worthwhile?
Yeah.
Or is there other strategies other than the traditional way of renting it out that may mean that it could be worthwhile as well?
I think that's a really good point. People will live in a property and love that property because it's been their home, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to have appeal to a broader tenant context. What would be your suggestions around that evaluation process, Jade?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the demand, it's good to have a decent demand, a good rental pool there so that you don't end up with a property that's going to be vacant. So if you're going to be looking at that demand, a good place to start is to talk to local real estate agents that know the area. Another way is to monitor online what's coming up for rent and, how quickly it's coming off the market as well.
Mm-hmm. And would you be suggesting that you self-manage the property or actually get an agent in, or, what are the pros and cons around each of those options? Because it sounds, it is technically easy enough to do, but...
Yeah, I think it's becoming easier to self-manage with technology that's becoming available. And it's over a quarter of all rental properties now are self-managed, and it's becoming more and more common.
Okay.
So I think it's something to consider, but it's definitely not for everyone. If the property isn't nearby, that makes it much harder. Or if you don't have good people on the ground that can take maintenance requests and all that kind of thing.
So let's say, as a hypothetical, I'm rentvesting. I've bought an investment property interstate. what would be your suggestions as a first time landlord, let's say, in terms of one, attracting the right property manager, or interviewing the right property managers, and two, getting the right tenant on board?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more important for that point of view to get an agent in,
Sure.
unless you have someone on the ground that you can really trust.
Yeah.
I think so. The first thing to consider when looking for a good property manager is making sure you know what questions to ask. A few good questions could be, do you own property yourself? Are you a property owner or a property investor? I think generally property managers that own property have a different perspective on things. Another question you can ask is, what are their systems? What are their rental arrears management systems? Have they, how many times have they been taken to tribunal or had to kick tenants out? Those kind of questions that are performance based that kind of really help you see how good they are at their job.
Yeah. And the truth is the end result in those outcomes. Cash flow is the lifeblood of any investor. So I guess you want to ensure that your property is going to be occupied close to 100% of the time, and that importantly they're paying the rent. So what would be some good answers, or what would you want to see within that rental arrears policy and dispute resolution process coming back from property managers, Jade? What would be your advice there?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the end of the day, you're not a charity, and if you're investing, if you're owning property as an investment, it needs to be looked at as a business. And I think in terms of rental management strategy, I think it's really important to know what their system is for when they start notifying the tenant they're falling behind, when they issue notice to terminate as soon as they can, how long it takes for them to realise that they're falling behind.
That's a good point. What they do. Yeah. And what else would you suggest around that?
I think what their success rate is with getting tenants moved on as well, if they do have issues, whether they get dragged through the courts or whether that, actually I think the biggest thing is making sure you find tenants who don't play the system. So interviewing from the start, having a really good recruitment policies in place to make sure that you're finding the right tenant with the right attitude from the start, I think is the best kind of questions you can be asking.
So in that recruitment process, what would you be screening for?
I think a lot of property managers focus on what their rental history is, which definitely is important. But some people may not have a rental history. I think the most important thing is screening on attitude as well, not necessarily just how good they look on paper. So what kind of questions are they asking, to make sure that the tenant's happy to follow instructions, filling out all the questions in their application. Are they avoiding questions? So some of those things would definitely strike red flags for me. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit at the beginning there about strategy. How do you actually determine what the right rental strategy is going to be for you in order to then get the right tenant and then get the right property manager to get, a decent return?
Yeah, I think it's not just like a one off-the-shelf solution for everyone. I think it really depends on what people's goals are, what their risk profile is, and I guess there's a few different things to think about, what the preferences are, how much time they have to put into it as well. So I think there's a few things to consider, and I've created an online course that will help people go through all the different options and weigh out the pros and cons of each strategy.
Okay, cool. Did you create this course, I guess, from your passion and your association with the industry, but I guess maybe, I would guess there's probably been some lessons that you may have learned along the way as well. Yourself or other clients that you have, what are perhaps some common mistakes that they generally make?
Yeah, definitely. I made some mistakes early on. I started renting out my property 10 years ago when I was still at uni, and I started looking for people that were just like me that I could identify with, that were in, first or second year uni, which wasn't the best decision. But I think once you know how to protect yourself as a landlord, you don't need to go to what's comfortable and, try to find people that, so like in terms of renting to friends or family, it could seem attractive. But, in my experience, when you have relationships that could be broken or damaged, then you've actually got more to lose than renting out to someone else.
Yeah, I've made some monumental errors in in that as well, in terms of having friends or people that I know through association living in properties, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily end well, albeit that everyone has the best intentions.
Yeah, that's right.
It sometimes doesn't work out, which is a loss for the friendship as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think at the end of the day, if you're buying a property as an investment, it really needs to be a business decision, not an emotional decision.
Absolutely.
And, if you want to put the rent up, or, you don't want to have to feel guilty about that either.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So you mentioned the course. What's the course all about, Jade?
So the course is all about renting a property for the first time, and it's you can find it at www.landlordinstitute.com.au/rent.
Mm-hmm.
And for all you Rentvesting listeners, I'm offering a 10% discount if you put in the code Rentvesting.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jade.
Yeah, no worries. And there's lots of downloadables that will go through all the questions that will help you find the right property manager, find the right property accountant that will help create lots of tax savings for you, and all the questions to work out what the best strategy is for you.
Awesome. I'll get a hyperlink off you, and I'll add it into the show notes there for listeners to download. But Jade, thank you very much for giving up your time and sharing your experiences with us. It's great to have you on the Rentvesting Podcast.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Peter. I appreciate it.
All the best. Bye, Jade.
If you'd like to take up Jade's offer, the link is going to be in the show notes, and be sure to apply the coupon code RENTVESTING for your exclusive discount for being a Rentvesting Podcast listener. As a quick FYI, Rentvesting doesn't take third-party referral commissions through the podcast, so be sure to check it out, and please show your support for the podcast in other ways by leaving a review and subscribing in order to keep the show alive. Here's to your Rentvesting success, and see you again next week. Bye-bye.